Are we live?
We are live. G'day, Ed.
How
you doing, mate?
Are we live, Rob? Okay.
We're live. We're live.
All right. So,
Happy Monday, mate.
Thank you, man. I'll tell you the punchline of that joke later on. Then. You don't want to go live right in the middle of a good joke. You know that's and I'm not going to start over again. No. I'm good, man. How are you doing?
I'm really well, man. I'm really well. Had a bit of downtime over the weekend. Recorded some videos yesterday. It's been really good. It's been productive for me. So lots going on. Looking forward to getting into today's show. Got a lot of. I love the concept of hypocrisy. And I love the concept of juxtaposing two different people and two different ideas together. So I'm going to do that for us today. But before we get into any of that, I want to say welcome to the Unspoken Truth to all of our audience that's out there. If this is your first time here, welcome. Edward Anderson is my co-host. My name is Robert Bruss, and I'm located in Sydney. And here we are in the future on Tuesday, and it's Monday there in Minnesota. And we're live every day here on the Unspoken Truth channel at 5:30 a.m. Sydney time and 2:30 p.m. Minnesota time. You can also find us as a podcast in your favorite podcasting app. An hour or so after the show's finished, I'll upload the file into Spotify, pulls into Apple, and you can find us as a podcast wherever your favorite podcasting apps are. Don't forget to come on over and follow us on Twitter, Rumble, and also on Telegram as well, where I've been sharing a whole bunch of content that you may not have had exposure to. It's all about the unspoken truth. It's about pulling back the curtain and seeing exactly what's going on behind the real story. And I can tell you what, Ed, over the last couple of days, I pulled a few videos out of Twitter and uploaded them there into Telegram. And my mind is just boggled. I think I've come around to thinking that Twitter is maybe one of the better social medias out there for someone like myself, because I'm just seeing truth. I'm constantly seeing truth out there. And, I'm not being spoken to or spoken down to by a narrative, which I think is a really good thing. Are you on Twitter yet? You said that was going to be your weekend project.
Oh, gee, that's right. Well, the weekend's not over for me. It's a long weekend, Memorial Day weekend.
It's still the weekend of Monday for you.
That's my excuse. Damn, that's right. I was supposed to get to that. No, I've not gotten to Twitter yet. I mean, look, are they going to ask me to send in my passport and my biometric information and everything when I sign up? Am I going to have to send them the name of my firstborn children or something?
And then you have to pay $8 to get a blue tick.
Well, see, there you go. Forget that.
No, get on there. I want to share some stuff with you, man. I got so much stuff to share.
Okay, man. Robert's dragging me into the 21st century. What century is this? Yeah, the 21st century. Yeah,
kicking and screaming into the 21st century. By the way, as well. That's how it is. Ladies and gentlemen, on today's show, we're going to talk about: is it possible to reunite the left and the right? Could something as crazy as that, an idea as mad as that, actually come to pass? Well, RFK is trying to do that in America. I'll show you what he has to say a little bit about that, but then I'll also juxtapose that with Ron DeSantis and see what he says about that, which is the complete opposite. He wants to destroy the left from the right. What's going to play out? What works? Is it love or is it destruction? I'm not entirely sure, and I want to open up the conversation to see what you guys think about that as well. Ed's got a little piece on how our freedoms are slowly taken away, how our choices are taken away, and how the government limits what you can and can't do. You think you live in a free society, but the unspoken truth is you don't. You live in a society that's curated specifically for you to get you to do certain things. And, our education system is the very beginning of that. They're training our young people to be slaves so they can go and pay taxes. They're not training people to be able to think for themselves, to be able to use their own mind and actually create a life for themselves in this world. They want you to stay at school, go to university, get a giant debt, so you have to go to work to pay all of that debt off. And then by the time you're 40, you can maybe start thinking about living your life a little bit. But by the time you get there, things are so chaotic in your life that you have a really hard time and you've got no choice but to continue on the path that you're on. It's a sad fact, and that's a interesting discussion that we've got for you today, ladies and gentlemen. Ed, have you got any opening remarks as we kick off the show here, mate?
Yeah, shout out to all my friends in the Hey Ed WhatsApp group and on the Hey Ed YouTube channel. We are streaming live these days on the Hey Ed YouTube channel, so that's always really exciting. That's a brand new Rob figured out how to do that. He pulled some strings at YouTube, I guess. Who are you sleeping with now at YouTube to get that done? So thank you very much.
I wish. I wish.
So welcome everyone, and this should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's get into today's show. I want to kick off by, as I said, is it possible to unite the left and the right? I've got a couple of clips I want to play, so I'll play the RFK one first because it's the warm, fuzzy one, and then I'll play the Ron DeSantis one, and let's have a little conversation about that. All right, here we go.
Podcast all the time, which is the healing power of love, of uniting people from the left and the right in a populist rebellion against this superstructure. And I don't know if it will work, but that's what I'm trying to do. I'm going to go forward as if I believe that it was going to work, and I'm seeing the tremendous power coming from people now. More and more people on the left are joining my campaign. I had calls this week from Jeffrey Sachs, from Ralph Nader, from many other kind of liberal leaders who are part of the superstructure of the liberal democracy forever. And of course, on the right, the groups that were vilifying each other continue to vilify each other. The profit of that, that cabal that you're talking about, the uniparty cabal, the worst thing that they can imagine is that we can unify far left and far right in a revolution against this corrupt merger of state and corporate power. And that is, my plan. That's what I'm going to try to do. And so far things are going well.
All right, so it's a bit of an experiment that he's running, and he even says in that interview with Russell Brand that what he's doing is an experiment, and Russell Brand loves it, right? He's the freedom, hippie loving, free love for everybody type thing scenario, and I think he really resonates with that message. Although I think Russell Brand is very conservative in his ideas, he really resonates with that message of love and kindness. So just put a pin in that for a second, and let's have a look at what Mr. Sanctimonious has to say for himself, because I think it's the complete opposite, and I love this juxtaposition of that. Check it out.
Party in 2024. Obviously, the front runner is President Donald Trump. When I go out and I talk to Americans, I don't know that you all share all the same policy positions. I don't know that you share the same personality, but you do share a base of Republicans. Most of the people that support you probably voted for President Trump twice. And the first comment I hear over and over again is, why doesn't Ron DeSantis wait for President Trump's second term and then run? And what is your best answer? Why is right now the time for Ron DeSantis to run for president?
Because everyone knows if I'm the nominee, I will beat Biden and I will serve 2 terms, and I will be able to destroy leftism in this country and leave woke ideology on the dustbin of history. At the end of the day, I've shown in Florida an ability to win huge swaths of voters that Republicans typically can't win, while also delivering the boldest agenda anywhere in the country. And I think there's a reason why the legacy media is attacking me more than they're attacking anybody else, because I think they realize that if I'm successful in winning the Republican nomination, we're going to bring it home in the general election. And I've pledged to Republican voters, if you nominate me, I will be taking the oath of office on January 20th, 2025 on the west side of the Capitol. No excuses, no more excuses about why we can't get it done. We need to get it done, and I will get it done.
He's not very warm, is he? He has what we call here in Australia a resting bitch face. But the male version of that, I don't know what the male version of that is, but his face is like, it's like, dude, maybe like smile with your eyes a little bit. Maybe if you were a little bit warmer, you're going to get a bit more cut through.
Well, he only has like a 15-second time clip. I mean, how many emotions is he supposed to share in 15 seconds? Give him a setting, and don't worry, he'll come. He's a good guy. He's a funny guy, actually.
Is he?
Yeah, you'll get a chance to see other sides of him. Don't worry about that.
Must be hard going from interview to interview, answering the same questions over and over again constantly as well.
Well,
he's got to think on his feet and doing that. It's like a very hard thing to do.
Well, I'm sure his answers are very well thought out by this time, right? That's one of the things about long campaigns is you want to start early so you can get through all of those questions that are going to be coming, so you can get your pitch down, you can get your phrases down, you can give your answers, so there are few surprises. But this is why governors tend to do better running for president than senators do, because they do more of these kind of substantive, policy interviews, right? So
they've got to sell their policies, don't they?
Yeah,
and
right.
They're used to selling their policies.
Yeah, and they study the policies, right? They get deep into it because they're the executive decision makers for their government, for their local government. But listen, I think DeSantis is onto something here, because this whole idea of, I know we're going to be talking about, the flower power versus the iron fist here.
Hold on. Let me put your graphic up. Destruction of the left, perhaps a better way.
Okay. Yeah.
Are you on Ronnie's side of the ledger? Are you, where he says that's what he's going to do? He's going to destroy the radical left.
Yeah, I am, and I'll tell you why. I think he's got a winning strategy there, because if you look at what's been at the pushback that's going on right now against wokest corporations, this is a relatively new phenomenon. Literally, like in the past 3 weeks, 4 weeks, we've seen a spate of populist revolt against companies that are obviously woke. Now, companies like Target, they've been woke for an awful long time. I mean, the things that they've been doing, but they didn't kind of not on the sly, but they didn't publicize it. But when there's been this flourish of internet, shorts and YouTube videos, people talking about this issue, it's coming, and it's rising to the top really, really fast. This issue is top of mind right now, and the quiet, silent, majority, they're starting to get ticked off. That's what got Trump into office. Is the silent majority said, finally, we have someone sticking up for us. And it's the same phenomenon with DeSantis. He's going to fill that role of somebody who's finally fighting for us, because conservatives and traditionalists tend not to be the squeaky wheel. They're too busy leading their lives. They don't push their ideology and the morals on other people, unlike the left that does, right? And so when you're a noisemaker, when you're a disagreeable person or a disagreeable movement, you tend to get more things done because you are willing to be more disagreeable. And sometimes people say, all right, whatever, just go away, and they go along with it. And that's kind of their strategy. Well, now the silent majority, I think, is they're gotten to a point right now where enough is enough. When you start going after the kids, and you told me, you said, mama bears, man, look out for the mama bears. And you're right. When you start going after the kids and forcing things upon the kids without the parents knowing about it, that's a bridge too far. And so that whole woke movement now is being really resented by the public. So I think DeSantis is, I think he's very aware of that, and he's going to milk that for all of its worth. And I think that's a winning strategy.
So what about on the other side of the ledger there, where RFK is saying, I think with a message like I've got, I can bring the radical left and the radical right together to find some common ground. And I think what to his point, I like his idea. I like what he's trying to do. I like what he stands for. But the problem is that on that side of politics, they've said there's no other candidates. There's only one candidate. So what's he even doing it for?
Yeah, well, in a lot of ways, he sounds like a conservative. He's bringing up a lot of conservative issues. So I think his best bet is to capture a lot of the conservative base out there. That look, if he gets the nomination, he's going to have the liberals anyway, right?
But how can he even get the nomination if they've said no, Joe Biden's running?
Well, that's his big issue, and I don't know whether he can capture that, because the deep state and the machine, they're not going to like the messages that RFK is spouting. A lot of the messages, right? A lot of his
Have you
messages.
Heard his message about the CIA? What he said?
It's been proven now that they killed his uncle.
Yeah. So, but did you see how he said he's going to try and reform it?
Oh yeah. And I think he even quoted in that interview that you had there, with Russ, who was it with? It was with
Russell Brand.
Yeah, Russell Brand. He told him, listen, I talked to DeSantis about this topic, and he said, so what are you going to do about the NIH? And he said, DeSantis is responsible. I'm going to burn it to the ground, right? And he thought, and his answer is, well, I think more of a surgical approach is better, because there are plenty of patriots inside of the CIA, people who are good moral fibers. The problem is really at the top, and he's probably right about that. I have no doubt that there are a lot of good patriots inside of the CIA. But listen, Hitler thought he was a patriot too. So, right.
Not that you're drawing a comparison there. He does a good job, though, in in the interview there. I'll grab the links at the end of this. I'll put the links down in the show notes so everybody can see it. But if you don't know, folks, what RFK is proposing, he said that there's really two parts to the CIA. There's the analyst part, the intelligence gathering, espionage part, which they do overseas. They do it offshore. Remember, spies don't actually do anything. Spies are actually in countries to recruit other people to do the spying for them. It's not like some sort of Jason Bourne movie where there's operators like that are, you know, working around some other parliament building, looking in filing cabinets or something like that. That's not what they're doing. They're getting the people that work in those buildings to do that for you. But what he was saying was there's two parts. There's the espionage spying part of it, but then there's the black ops part of it. And the two things were intertwined. And he said if you can unravel those two things, then the people conducting the surveillance and the espionage operations in the best interest of the United States would then not be tangled up in all of this black ops stuff, and they wouldn't get them because now there's accountability to it there. And so those two things are not going to cross over each other. And he said that that's the problem that they're having, is that the regular CIA agents are getting tangled up in all the black ops there, which is causing them all sorts of problems. I think that his message is pretty solid. But I also think Ron DeSantis' message is maybe a little bit too much. Do you think it's too? I think maybe Ron DeSantis is a little bit too far to the right there of saying, you know, I'm going to destroy the radical left and they're going to be sent to the dustbin of history. Well, if you're going out there saying that, what you're poking the hornet's nest, and those people on the left are much louder than the people on the right. That's the problem. And if he was a little bit more measured in his approach, I think maybe he'd get a little bit more cut through.
Yeah,
what do you think?
No, I don't think.
Think
No,
so?
I don't think he's going to. He's going to be able to schmooze his way with the leftists. You know, there's nothing he's going to be able to do to placate them. I say, oh, well, you know what? He's not such a bad guy after all. No, that's not the way it is.
So for that reason, there's really no option then, isn't there? If you're never going to placate them, as you say, then the only thing that you could do is just go like full on at them.
Read the room, collectively, right? And if he's there to represent the conservative and moderate, base, given any kind of quarter to the left is not going to fly. We want someone who will finally fight for us. $1 billion fund manager, great name, by the way. I hope you are a $1 billion fund manager. It'd be great to have you, watching the channel. He made the point that listen, Trump, in all the polls, Trump's leading DeSantis anyway. So I don't know why we're focusing so much on DeSantis in this conversation. Because his first issue is he's got to take over Trump. So that's it, and that's a pretty tall order, right there. But you brought up so I agree with the $1 billion fund manager. By the way, on that, I think at the moment, Trump's the man to beat. Trump's still the man for.
Well, Jesse asked that really good question at the start, where he said, why are you running now? Why don't you just let Trump win this time around and you go for the next one, or maybe go pony up with him as the vice president or something like that? There's a lot of good things to be said for that. I just like the messaging. One of the things that I like, am I into politics? Do I like politics? Yeah, kind of, sort of. I'm a bit interested in those things. They definitely kind of affect you, and you should pay attention to those things. But the thing that I like watching is how they communicate and how the messaging and the marketing there as well, because a lot of that is around their personal brand and what it is that they represent and what it is that they stand for. And not a lot of people in the world know what their personal brand is, and they definitely don't know what they stand for. If you just ask just a normal person at a barbecue on a Sunday afternoon, what do you think about these things? 9 times out of 10 people will go, I don't really know, man. I don't watch the news. I don't spend any time thinking about any of those things. And that's because most people are just too busy going to work, going home and putting food on the table for their families. They don't care about any of those other things. And I think it's a really interesting, in this day and age of media and social media and how everybody's communicating, I think it's really important to take some lessons from what these people are doing on the big world stage, so to speak. So Ron DeSantis, is able to go out there and communicate his message and get it across in a 15-second soundbite. Is Donald Trump able to do the same thing? Yeah, sometimes. And I love watching that aspect of it. I think there's a lot to learn from that for you as an individual.
Well, in terms of pure entertainment value, Trump wins, right?
Every time.
Yeah, right. Because people never know what's going to come out of his mouth. And look, he's already select. Everybody knows who Trump is. There's still a lot of people who don't know DeSantis, right?
Yeah.
So Trump's got the name recognition right there. And if DeSantis were to become the nominee, he's going to have to introduce himself to half the country and explain to them what he's all about. So he's got a bigger project ahead of him than Trump. Everyone knows what. Geez, this again? I am so sorry.
That's every episode.
Yeah, I never get phone calls. Only one. Okay, now DeSantis, he is very articulate. And he's very good at getting his message across in a very articulate, understandable way. He's brilliant at that. Okay, Trump, like me, trips over his words. Sometimes searches for the right where he comes up and then comes up with the wrong word. But people know what he means, right? And I think people relate to that as, you know what, I can relate to that. You know, sometimes I'm in conversations with people and I'm searching for the right word, and sometimes I flub it. And I think people see Trump as he's not a polished, a politician. And I think that right there makes him more relatable to the average American, right? Whereas DeSantis, he talks more like a lawyer. He's very good at getting his messages across, but he does it in kind of a very academic, kind of straightforward way, which is nice. But in terms of, look, elections are basically popularity contests, right? And we always have to remember that our society now is very tribal. We've talked about this many times before. Well, we are basically a 50-50, country, or maybe a 49.5 country. Yeah. All elections from now on, they're going to be, won and lost with a very sliver part of the electorate. I'm guessing like 4 to 8% of the electorate that you might be able to change their mind on. That's it. So all of their efforts going forward, these politicians are going to be working on getting that small sliver. That's all they're going for. They're not looking to convince the other side. So JFK's idea of bringing everyone together and having a big kumbaya moment, we'll sit around in a circle and sing the Coke song from 1960. I guess it's a nice thought.
That's a pipe dream.
Yeah, it's a pipe dream. It's never going to happen.
That's where I was hoping you'd get to. I was hoping you'd get to that point. I want to close out this little segment by asking you a question here, Ed, about the way the American election process actually works, just to get your thoughts, right? So here in Australia, when there's an election, it's slightly different. It's definitely about the leaders. It's definitely about personalities and the people that you seem to resonate with most. They came out with an app recently. I think it was 2 elections ago. So it's not recent. It's been a while now, I suppose. It's been 8 years. But they came out with an app that helped you to better understand where you stood in politics. So the idea of the app, and it was put out by, I think it was put out by ABC, like the news broadcaster, and they'd ask you a series of questions. And, do you agree? Do you not agree? And depending on where you stood on the particular question they were asking you, they then said, your views are more conservative, or they're more liberal, or they're more green, or whatever they are, right? So here's where you sit. Have a look at their policies. And I thought it was a really good initiative because, I've voted for Liberal and I've voted for Labor, but based on personalities as well. Anything but ScoMo. I would vote for anybody but Scott Morrison. He was like awful. He's a horrible Prime Minister. He was an awful person. And he destroyed the Australian economy during COVID. He was like horrible. No chance of you coming back, mate. I'll vote for anybody except for you, including and up to the Labor Party. And, in 2007, when Kevin Rudd was up for election, it's like, maybe it is time for the Liberal Party to go. You've been there for such a long time. Enough John Howard, enough Peter Costello. Time to go. Okay, let's give him a go and see what happens. Well, that was a giant mistake, wasn't it? How did that work out for you? It was an absolute basket case and a complete disaster. And so I've looked at all sides of politics over the years, and I'm not tied to one political party or another. I'm tied to their ideas. And if somebody's got some really good ideas, well, and as you say, the RFK ideas are really good that he has, but his ideology is maybe not quite there. So my question to you, Ed, is do you think that Americans in the political process make the mistake of looking to one person to solve and to save America? Do you think that that's what they do?
Yeah, because like in the case of now, of course, they shouldn't, because it almost doesn't matter anymore who is the president of the United States. The people really running the show is the deep state. That's what's real. Those people who really, everyone else is kind of an afterthought. Now, Trump was the closest person who came to breaking that omelet, right? And that's why the deep state went after him so viciously. And they will always go out. The deep state right now, they're on alert status for every election here on out. And every conservative, they're going to go after them with everything they've got. But the public, the public, they tend to, there's a famous story about the 1960 election between JFK and Nixon, right? People who listened to the debate on the radio thought that Nixon won. He was a clear winner. People who saw it on TV thought that JFK won. He had the look, right? The presidential look. It's about image. And if Roosevelt had to run for president in the age of TV, he wouldn't have been elected because he was in a wheelchair. Right. So a lot of this is image, and a lot of it is PR. And of course, over the decades, the PR people, they are polished now. It's down to a science. And there's lots of money. And so it's about wrapping it up all in a package. And they say, all right, so if you're going to Ohio, these are the issues you need to talk about. And this is the answer you need to give. But if you go to Florida, these are the issues you want to talk about. And these are the answers you want to give. So there's a lot of triangulation that goes on in getting, it's a whole science getting elected, right? That's why with the standard, this is an advantage that Trump has, is he's not a politician. That's why there's no filter between his brain and his mouth. So everything comes out of his mouth, he's thinking. Now, it can be a bad thing, but people will say, well, at least I know what he thinks. At least I know that is what he thinks about that particular topic. Even if I don't like it, even if it came out, harsh. Whereas with a politician like DeSantis, say, all right, well, it came out smooth, but he's been a politician a while. Is there any triangulation here? Is there? So Madison Avenue plays a big role in who becomes president of the United States. It almost doesn't matter. Look, there are so few people in America who care about the issue of abortion, really. I mean, abortion rights are not at risk. Nobody's trying to take anyone's abortion rights. It's not on the table. Yet in every election cycle, that is the number one issue for Democrats.
It's a strange go-to for them.
Yeah. They're going to take it because they know it works. It's about fear-mongering, right? And in the next segment, we're going to talk about the importance of scaring people. And that's right. In every election cycle, there's so much negative press, so negative commercials, right, against the other guy. What do you call it? So attack ads, right? It's all attack. And at the beginning in every election, every candidate says, you know what? I'm going to have a clean campaign. I'm not going to do dirty attack ads. And within a week, they're doing dirty attack ads, right? Because the chief strategist says, all right, well, we tried it for a week. It's not going to work. So we got to go back to what works, because it works. Attack ads.
Well, exactly. It's based around news content. If it bleeds, it leads. I can't lead the 6 o'clock news bulletin with guide dogs. It won't work. People will be, oh, what am I tuning into this shit for every day? Like that. What they want to do is they want to see the destruction and the chaos in society, because it's polarizing and it makes you reel back, and then you're like, oh my God, how's that going to? And it's like has that really negative implication. But I'm not sure if you quite got there for me. So, is it a mistake to look to Ron DeSantis or Donald Trump or to RFK for solving your political problems in your country? Is it a mistake, or do individuals need to speak up a little bit more? Because I think that, I did a video yesterday, you mentioned that off air before, but I sort of think that if you don't, why should you care about any of the, why do I even care about American politics when I live in Australia? Why do I even care about that? Well, this is our society. This is the basis of our culture and our society. And I think if you don't speak up and say something or do something or move towards making a difference and making a change, then you're going to get railroaded by the left, because they're very loud and they're very good at PR.
Right. Yeah. Well, so to answer your question directly, yes, you should care about the person you're voting for at the top of the ticket. It does matter. If do you have someone like Biden who is going to carry the water for the woke crowd and give them the green light and to make their lives easier to promote their agenda? Look what happened within 24 hours of his coronation. He had stopped building the border wall and put out the welcome mat for the illegal immigrants. He
They
also
have a big pile of folders on the desk that they sign, right?
Yep.
And they're all the
Executive
things
orders,
that the
yeah.
president goes, nah, no more, no more, no
Yep.
more, no more. It's
Yep.
already lined up and ready to go.
So it does matter who's sitting in that chair. Those executive orders, although they're not law, they do make things happen,
Yeah.
or they stop things from happening. And he put a kibosh on our energy program. Inflation was a real big issue long before Ukraine. Okay, because of that one little step of we were energy independent the day that Biden came into office, and now we're going hat in hand to our enemies in order to get oil. He sold off our strategic oil reserve to China. I mean, what the hell?
Hey, their aircraft carrier needs some fuel.
In my opinion, that's an impeachable offense right there, all by itself. But he's got cover. He's got cover by the deep state. He's got cover by the DOJ. He's got cover by the media. So who you're voting for at the top thing does matter. However, that's the least you can do. Other thing you can do is start pushing back. When Target starts targeting literally your children to have their breasts binded when they're 9 years old, you should not appreciate that. You should say nope. When you have Target, funding organizations that teach children the importance of getting transgendered without your parents knowing about it. Okay, you should be pissed off and you should express it. Thank God.
I felt that exact feeling yesterday when that's the reason I made that video yesterday. You can check it out on the YouTube channel, folks, where I'm standing in front of the Opera House. I was in the gym and I was like doing my warm up and I looked up at the screen and there's Albo standing in front of the Sydney Opera House because he made a speech yesterday down in Adelaide about the voice to Parliament. And he's standing in front of the Opera House with his suit on. He looks like the Prime Minister. He looks like a statesman and that. And I urge Australians to vote yes to the voice. I urge Australians. And I'm just sitting on the exercise bike looking up at it and I thought, I have to do something about it. I can't sit back here and just go, because the Prime Minister of Australia is running a policy of apartheid here in Australia, South African apartheid, where he's saying that less than 4% of Australians are Indigenous, and he's saying that they should have a voice to Parliament, and he's saying that they're more important than everybody else in Australia. They're more important than the other 96% of Australians that are out there. And I thought to myself, I can't have it anymore. It doesn't matter if I don't get any cut through. It doesn't matter if nobody watches the video. It doesn't matter. At least I'm doing something. At least I'm speaking up and saying something. Because the vast majority of people will just go, oh, yeah, okay, he wants us to vote yes. Okay, I'll vote yes. But in the last couple of...
You think so?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Because in the last couple of years, everybody... I used to think Australians were like tough, larrikin, go fuck yourself type people that would resist everything. But the actual opposite has been proven to be true. Australians are sooky snowflakes that follow everything that the government tells them to do. And they can't think for themselves. They'd rather outsource their thinking to somebody else. And that's fine. You want to outsource your thinking to an expert. That's fine. I completely understand that. They're the experts. Sure, I'll do what the expert tells me to do. But the experts that have been put in front of you are liars and they're fools. And now you've got a guy that's in front of you trying to divide Australian society by saying one minority group is more important than everybody else. And he wants to write that into the Constitution of Australia. And it's maddening. It's maddening because it makes you have to care about these things because it's the destruction of our way of life. Because what that's going to do is it's going to create massive discourse in our political system, which will affect every single person in Australia. And the worst thing about everything that they're doing here in Australia with the voice to Parliament is none of it has actually been written down about how it will work. what they're doing is they're asking us to vote for it in principle. And then once the yes vote gets up, then we'll give you the detail of how it actually works. But I can't trust anybody that's going to give me the information and do the right thing by us, because in the last 3 years, all the government has done consistently is lie to us. So we all know politicians lie, but they wouldn't say they lie. They just say, I changed my mind because I've got new information. In light of new information, I've got a different view on that particular topic or that particular thing. And fair enough. Okay, fair enough. I'll give you that. But the reality is they blatantly lied to us about just about everything to do with COVID. They were liars, and they're just so unbelievably foolish. And then they take us, their constituents, as fools. And everybody, that's what I thought. I thought people would resist. And there's a percentage of the Australian population that would resist, but most people didn't resist. And most people in Victoria re-elected Daniel Andrews. And he's the person who this is the most locked down city in the whole world. And then he said, oh, no one will have to pay for anything with COVID. And just last week, he introduced a tax that will go for the next 10 years to pay for COVID for his fuck-ups. But the Victorian people re-elected the guy. And I'm thinking there's one of two things going on. Victorians are just dumb as a box of rocks, or the system is completely corrupt. And I think there's like a bit of both going on there, where they see mainstream media, they see the hunchback himself on TV, and then they think, oh, he knows what he's doing, he's in charge, he got us through it, it'll be okay. But the reality is, you have to care about the people that you're electing, because the people that you're electing have a direct impact in your life. You would never think that the Premier of Victoria would have a direct impact in your life as a Victorian, but he did. He locked you down. Likewise here in New South Wales, likewise right there where you are in Minnesota, Ed, those politicians did the same thing to you. So you should care about the political system. You should care about these things. And more important than your vote is your voice, your ability to speak up, and your ability to share your views of those things. Because if you can share that just with a bunch of people, you don't know what influence that would have. Because if you highlight the hypocrisy of their behavior, maybe people will see that and think, well, yeah, you're right. Well, maybe instead of voting for that moron, I'll vote for this one.
Well, not everyone can have a YouTube channel, and at least I hope they don't, because it put me out of business. So, but I've got a comment to make about that. But first, I've got a question for you. So, do you think that maybe there in Australia you also have a silent majority where most people are disgusted at the woke agenda, but they're just not, making noise about it, and they're just and they could come when they reach their boiling point. They do speak up, and there is sort of a people's revolution, so to speak.
You would think. You got to be careful, because saying yes to that means you're inside of that echo chamber. But if I'm honest with myself, I have to say no. I have to say no. There's not a silent majority. And the reason I say that is because in the last election, we had Clive Palmer from the United Australia Party. So there's two parties here, Labor or Liberal. Okay? And the Liberal Party are the Conservative Party. It's the opposite in the language, right? So, and the Labor Party are the progressives on the other side of politics. And Clive Palmer, who's like a billionaire, created the United Australia Party. And he was a member of the Liberal Party for a little while, broke away, left politics, and then created the UAP. And he outspent the Labor and Liberal Party combined in advertising. And that's not really a big thing here in Australia. In America, trying to get cut through, and the gazillions of dollars that they spend goes on TV advertising to get people to get out and vote. But we don't really need to do that here in Australia, because our political system says that voting is compulsory. Everybody votes no matter what. So the amount of money that you spend on TV ads, is that really going to impact whether or not people are going to vote? Because they're going to vote for whoever they're going to vote for anyway. So you have to be very convincing to get people across the line. And so Clive Palmer spent $80 million on advertising. It's the most money that's ever been spent in political advertising ever in Australian history. And he didn't get any cut through. There was one member elected to the Senate. That was it, Ralph Babbitt. But the rest of them, what happened? And they were looking for members to join the party and to go up against politicians in seats here. And I saw a message on their YouTube channel saying, hey, we're looking for candidates. And I thought, I could go up against Scott Morrison here in Cook. And I could imagine if I knocked Scott Morrison off his perch as the UAP member here. And I thought to myself, I thought long and hard about actually doing that, because I've got the ability to do it. I've got the speaking ability. I think I'm young enough, but I'm also old enough. And I think people would kind of resonate to my message. And I think I could get some cut through there. But then I thought to myself, then you're just getting drawn into you just be a tiny itty bitty cog in a giant machine. And I just didn't like the idea of being pulled into politics. I had another friend of mine I was in the army with who called me prior to the election, and he said, there's a bunch of seats going up for pre-selection here. I think you'd be a good candidate to come for pre-selection. Come down. And I said, what political stripe? And he said, Labor. And I was like, fuck, man, really? Are you fucking kidding? And he goes, Rob, they're all the same. It doesn't matter what side of politics you're on. They're all the same. Scott Morrison was in the Labor Party before he was the Prime Minister in the Liberal Party. And I thought, yeah, well, that's true, like you could do all that. But I genuinely couldn't bring myself to actually go and be a politician or go and do something like that. But the Australian system and the Australian government is such that somebody like me could actually go and do something like that. You can throw your hat in the ring and have a go. And if you've got the right party backing you, then there's an opportunity. But to close the loop on your question, is there a silent majority in Australia? I don't think so, man. Because the silent majority are the ones that resonate with Clive Palmer and the UAP message. Because his message is about freedom, about no mandates for anything to do with, medical procedures, no mandates to do with anything. Have a go is essentially what he's saying. We live in the lucky country. If you have a go at something, you can be a billionaire like me too. And his message is actually really strong. His policies were excellent. And one of the things that really resonated for me is, I've been in the mining industry forever. And when we do deals, we're doing deals worth billions of dollars. So, it costs billions of dollars to dig this stuff out of the ground and then put it on a ship and then send it across the ocean, and somebody else buys it for billions more dollars, so we make a profit. He goes, I've been in boardrooms. I know how to do that. I've got a team and an experienced management team that can manage these deals to get better outcomes for Australia. And he says, now think of the people that are in politics right now. Think of the politicians that are negotiating those deals with Japan or with China or with whatever country. Those people have got zero experience when it comes to negotiating deals worth hundreds of billions of dollars that go for 35 years, because they don't have the foresight to do that because they've never been put in those positions. And they're the people that are representing Australia and doing the deals for Australia.
Are they though?
No wonder we've been treated like mugs, and no wonder we've been taken advantage of for such a long time. It's because these people are just completely incompetent, and not because they're not trying. They're incompetent because they've never done it before. And imagine, it's no different to me throwing my hat in a ring and suddenly, okay, now you're the only member of the House of Representatives, because I knocked Scott Morrison off his perch because he's a fucking moron, and that probably wouldn't have been a difficult task. I knocked him off his perch, and I was backed by a billionaire, and Scott Morrison's backed by the Liberal Party, but then you can highlight all the mistakes that he made in the last couple of years. Now I'm a member in the House of Representatives, and I'm the only member there. What possible difference could I make? And then Clive goes, all right, Rob, now it's your turn to go and negotiate the mining deal in Western Australia and China. Go and do it. I'll be like, what the fuck? I have no idea what I'm doing. I've never done something like that. But he would bring in his team, and they would help me, and they would support me, and they would be there. But in the Liberal Party, the mining minister or the natural resources minister or whoever the bloody hell that is, have they got mining magnates that have got 35, 40, 50 years of experience behind them negotiating these deals? I hope so. But it doesn't seem to me like that's the case, because it seems like we're continuously being taken advantage of by these other countries.
Well, nobody's been taken advantage of more than our politicians. Our politicians.
Oh my God!
We've given away America to China over decades.
And Trump says that, right? Trump says that so often. He's like, man, they're taking us for fools. Yep. Absolutely.
That's right. And Trump, he's a businessman. He's not a politician. He thinks like a businessman, and it's about results. Anyway, so I want to give a comment that's kind of an answer to your comment about whether people, are sheepish, whether they get in line, whether they're really paying attention, whether they really care about what's going on, and are they giving things that are going on around them enough thought. Well, I think that the worldwide flu that we had there for a couple of years was a gift from manna, a gift from heaven to those world elites who wondered what they can get away with. What can we
now
make?
Now they know.
Right, now they know. It was a wildly successful experiment. They had the whole world locked down. You can see live webcams of downtown, you name it, city, and it's a ghost town. And the people, putting poison into their body they weren't tested, but we had to take their word for it that it was safe. and the government officials, and if you didn't take it, you were shamed for not taking it. You're ostracized by other people.
Look what they got away with.
So look what they got away with. So that's not, that's kind of a depressing thought. When you think how easy it was to manipulate the entire world populace. The people like you and I never got the double jab, but you and I, because you haven't either, right?
Purely because I would just refuse to do what a politician tells me to do.
Right. Okay.
That's my grounds.
But those of us who avoided that poison, we're in a minority. We should be given rights because
we should have the voice to Parliament.
That's right.
Pure bloods.
That's right. Because a lot of people had it, even though they didn't believe it, they got it because they wanted to live their life. So I've got to get this if I want to keep my job. They're forced into it. So, but that was a very successful experiment, and I promise you, there's another pandemic of some kind coming down the road. It's just a matter of when, right? And it's going to be coming. And if it's not an actual disease, it'll be another form of a pandemic, another form of, you have to do this for the sake of the world. Maybe that's the way we save. Maybe that's the way we get rid of the U.S. dollar and get people on that digital coin they want us on. Well, you got to do it for the sake of the country. It's going to be that kind of a push. So,
well, that's a nice segue. Let's segue to the next topic. But before we do that, ladies and gentlemen, I want to remind you that we're available as a podcast over on Spotify. And this show today is brought to you by you. In this crazy, uncertain world, we all need a way to protect and insulate ourselves from the outside forces that we simply cannot control. I'm a news junkie, and after a lifetime of constantly immersing myself in the darkness and the despair that engulfs the world, the path to shield myself and my family has become crystal clear. I want to invite you to come and join me in the Unspoken Truth community, where I'll show you how I protect my family from this crazy world. You'll get access to 3 masterclasses worth over $1,000, as well as our live events, training, and community of truthers just like you. Come on over to the unspokentruth.com.au and join us for just 50 cents a day. What are you waiting for? Get started now at the unspokentruth.com.au.
What are you waiting for?
What are you waiting for? Come on over and show me how they take away our freedoms, Ed. This is a great topic. This is something we've discussed a lot, and I know you've got a little bit more to say on this.
Yeah, so I made a little presentation, and I will confess that I did take a snippet from another YouTube video, and we will have a link to that video. And that video is actually an hour-long video. It's very good, and I just took a couple minutes out of it for the sake of discussion. So we can, but when you get a chance, you should try to watch that entire video. All right, so here we go.
Right, take it away.
Record this. It is Memorial Day here in America. So happy Memorial Day to everyone. And today is a relevant topic because I want to talk to you about how our freedoms have been eroded and continue to be eroded by our very own government. These are the freedoms that our forefathers fought for. Okay, so let's talk about it. Okay, so you may feel like you have a lot of freedom in your everyday choices in life, right? Well, today we're going to talk about how the government has systematically taken away your freedom of choice in every aspect of your life. I want to start by showing you a very short clip from a video that I will have a link to in the description below, and everybody should watch that entire documentary. It is a little over an hour long. I'm just going to show you a few minutes of it, just enough to give us some talking points. But you really should make an effort to watch the video that I have linked below. So let's watch a few outtakes from that video, and then we'll talk about it at the other end.
In 2010, there was a simultaneous raid on 2 different locations in California. heavily armed agents stormed into private properties, arresting several U.S. citizens for dealing in a restricted substance. Now, drug raids happen quite frequently in the U.S. It's just one of the ways the authorities keep us free from malicious and harmful substances. Only this wasn't a drug raid. The substance being sold wasn't crack or crystal meth or even bootleg hooch. It was milk.
This is an example of just how heavy-handed the government is in routing out disfavored parties. In this case, the government operates on a public interest argument that raw milk is inherently unsafe. It is a breeding ground for bacteria, and because it is not pasteurized, the argument is it carries with it an enormous increased risk for consumers, such that it shouldn't be available. This is the position of the Food and Drug Administration. And the government cracks down on this one segment. And they do so with brute force, sending in stormtroopers, essentially, and shutting down the milk plant in its entirety and confiscating all of the milk, regardless of whether it's contaminated or not.
The FDA raided this organic market in order to keep us safe from the dangers of unpasteurized milk. Buying and selling unpasteurized milk, that is. They have no problem with you drinking raw milk if, say, you find a stray cow on the way home and decide to milk it yourself. But a reputable farmer trying to sell some to willing customers? That's a big no-no. Although this organic market was a club, with each member having signed a waiver acknowledging the potential risk of drinking raw milk, this was not good enough for the FDA. Did these people not realize that raw milk is a gateway food? What next? People eating cheese? Knocking back raw oysters, sushi, or, heaven forbid, eggs? Luckily, the FDA was there to step in and save these adults, at gunpoint, from the dangers of raw milk.
The reason why pasteurized milk doesn't come under this scrutiny, and the reason why raw milk as opposed to cheese, eggs, raw oysters, sushi, why they don't come under the same FDA scrutiny, is that the major milk manufacturers are a principal lobby within the FDA. They have very small profit margins per unit. And so if in Whole Foods and other places there are significant numbers of consumers who come in to buy raw milk products, it is a significant economic effect on the large milk processors.
The California milk raids were not an isolated event. Over the past few years, there have been raids all across the U.S. to crack down on the sale of many organic products. But despite any claims of safety concerns or risk, one thing is clear. The actions of the regulatory agencies, and by extension, the politicians that manage them, are not motivated by any notion of public good. They're motivated by the desire to stay in power. That takes money.
The problem with the U.S. political system is that it revolves around money. And so immediately that sets off this dichotomy of those who can afford to play in the system and those who can't. To run for office, you need $1.5 million. You need about $11 million to run for the Senate. So if you don't have money, where do you go? You go to the people who have a hand stretched out with money, ready to fund your campaign, but they're going to want something in return because, of course, they're not giving this money for charitable reasons. It very clearly advantages big businesses because they have more capacity to devote resources to influence buying.
Political influence has become just another arsenal in the marketing toolbox of large companies. Only instead of promoting themselves, they use this influence to suppress the competition. And the key to it all are lobbyists.
People think that we live in a free market society, and we don't. Big government and big business are way too closely aligned today, especially in the United States. And this, is because of lobbying, basically. We have cronyism. We don't have capitalism in the United States, especially when it comes to the military, and then big medicine, big food, like Monsanto, with all the GMOs and stuff. Most people don't want it, but yet it's being forced on us because Monsanto has such leverage in Congress through all the lobbying of the food industry.
So what is lobbying? Well, simply, lobbying is the act of influencing decisions made by legislators and regulatory agencies.
And the same is true of all government agencies. In fact, that's considered the normal way to do business in Washington.
Big government and big business essentially are the same, are they not? What's the difference between a corporation and a government agency when the corporation buys the politicians with campaign donations and the politicians do as they're told in passing laws that the corporation would have passed had the corporation been the government?
Sadly, this phenomenon is all too common today, and it's not specific to just one industry. Rather, it seems that many of the agencies which have the power to influence our daily lives are corrupted by the revolving door.
When you have delegated power to committees and government officials and agencies to regulate the economy, it always leads to corruption. It's too tempting for people not to use that power for their own personal agendas. And the revolving door is merely proof of the fact that when you give government and its agencies the power to regulate commerce, it always will lead to corruption.
9/10 of all federal law is not the product of those we elect, but rather the product of the unelected heads of these bureaucratic agencies. So we do not have a limited federal republic in the United States. What we have instead is an unlimited bureaucratic oligarchy in which these bureaucratic agencies operate largely without any accountability.
This isn't a representative form of government. They only represent the most powerful and the people who give them the most amount of money. The corporations, the multinationals, have taken over.
This relationship between big business and government agencies not only affects their competition in the economy, but all of us in our day-to-day lives.
What you want to do in an economy is you want to produce the products and services that are in greatest demand. And no one knows that except the market. But when politicians come in and they substitute their own judgment, generally they're not even trying to outguess the market and figure out what's best for us. They're generally just trying to give an advantage to one particular individual or group of individuals at the expense of another.
If you can pay enough money, you can make sure that you win on whatever issue you are concerned about. Maybe it's stopping legislation, maybe it's to get something passed, but ultimately you're looking to shape policy. And that policy has real impact in our daily lives.
Big government is in a collusion with big agriculture. There were never any scientific studies that determined that GMO food is equivalent to conventionally grown food. The Food and Drug Administration in the United States said, well, Monsanto has vouched for the safety of GMO food. And Monsanto said the FDA has certified it as safe. That's big business and big government together.
We have a very different set of production and processing criteria. First of all, our animals move. They're not in great big confinement animal feeding operations. Our animals don't do drugs. We don't vaccinate, we don't medicate, and we run our farm on the closed carbon cycle as opposed to buying in chemical fertilizer from outside. So, you know, the localization, the carbon cycle, animals move around, the lack of pharmaceuticals, all of that is 180 degrees different than today's industrial global petroleum-based food system. The globalization and corporatization of everything is gradually making it more and more difficult for independent farmers, independent people in the food system to market to their neighbors, to friends, to family, to whatever. And you do think every day about what bureaucrat is going to invade my life today.
Don't eat healthy, only eat crap. A few companies control everything. There's only a small group of agribusiness companies that control the entire food production. They're putting
Alrighty there.
I think the stream became unavailable there on the
Yeah, well,
Okay,
good.
so
I think you got the point across nicely there, Ed. You know, and there was several important pieces through that, and there's like several topics in there as well. And what those people are doing, what those commentators that are saying when they're being interviewed is this is how the system really works.
yep.
And if you never really paid any attention to that, you just got up, went to work, and came home, and went to the supermarket, bought your food, and that you'd never really think about it. That fellow right at the end there, that farmer guy, I've seen a few interviews with that guy recently, and he talks about his organic farming practices and how it works. And if you never knew anything about farming, it's actually a really, really super interesting guy. And he's got a lot of really good things to say, but predominantly the crux of his message is, you know, what bureaucrats coming at me today to stop me from doing what it is that I'm doing in a way that's not going to affect the environment or actually harm anybody, because I'm not doing it in the way that they want me to do it. So that they chip away at your freedoms by only allowing you to see what it is that you want to see. And I found a video the other day, and I uploaded it as a YouTube short onto the channel. It was a picture of, it was a video camera showing an ambulance tearing around this corner. It's like a right-hand turn. It's tearing around at about 100 kilometers an hour, you know, going to a job. There's a car tearing around the corner. They're doing that. And in one side it said BBC, and the other side it said another channel, and it shows the car going around the corner. And then in the BBC one, the car goes around the corner, and then there's an ambulance chasing it that they actually put into it. And the unspoken truth is that these authorities will only let you see what it is that they want you to see. They're not going to let you see anything else. They're only going to let you see what you want to see. And they're only going to give you the choices of A, B, C, D, or E. They're the choices that you have. If you don't like it, bad luck. That's just how it is.
Now, on that point, you know, I'm watching the live stream on another monitor for my channel, and it says stream unavailable, stream suspended for policy violations. So do you see that on your other channels? And so do you want to restart it? Maybe restart the stream, or
maybe we can do in a second. Let me just double check it.
But you know, I kind of wear that as a badge of honor, by the way.
You wear it as a badge of honor. Yeah, I definitely do see that as well. Yeah, we got Can there. So let me just end that.
I hope